Good day, my friends. Adab, Sat Shri Akal, Namaskar. This is Bobby Chandra back with the hiatus of BBD, and we are talking today about party with a difference, or party with with no difference. He says Pranab Dal Samta, party with a difference 2.0. He says it's not so much ideology, but opportunities provided that Mark Modi led BJP. Unquote, quote, opportunities. Opportunities is not about getting to the top, or because in Modi's Sarkar, you're not getting to do what you want to do on your own. You're being just told to do what to do. So what are the opportunities? Why did Jyoti jump? Why did RPI jump? Why did Jitin Prasada jump? It's all about the money, folks. It's all about the money. There's nothing more than that. Indian ideology does not, Indian commitment to the people does not go beyond that, folks. Don't fool yourself with all these guys jumping up and down, moving from one ideology, or actually from an ideology now we realize to no ideology. And that's going to have a hell of a lot of payback for the contradictions it's causing within the BJP. And that's the reason why the guys at the top are unable to control this loony right-wing guys, because they've let them out of the bag, right? And he says party with a difference, like I said. He says the truth is that the BJP is not oblivious of the diversity of Indian politics and is now adept at playing the contradiction to its benefit, recognizing that it cannot grow just by itself and that it will need talent and leaders from across the political spectrum, from which it must be seen as an attractive proposition in terms of both opportunity and growth. Opportunity. And let's just face it, it's all about, we can write all this stuff that we want, but in the end, when you have basically compromised and controlled all the necessary tools and levers of our constitution, which is the Supreme, the courts on one side, the media, which keeps spilling lies and just tells us we're living in this wonderful India that's suddenly going to be riding on a golden rath to God knows where. None of this, what is happening here and what is being told, is of any relevance. I think we're going to have to just write an absolutely brand new chapter on what's happening in India, folks. And maybe that's what they want, right? At the end of the day, right? You can't deny them that they control everything now, right? So be it, boys. So be it. So while all the bucks may be rubbing their hands in glee about what happened in Maharashtra and how Uddhav Thackeray has been thrown out, do remember the two largest states, which is all about 2024, Bihar, Maharashtra, 88 seats to the Lok Sabha. It's important to note that both these states, even though the government has BJP involved now in both, the face of both these places, large portion of vote share in Maharashtra was with Shiv Sena, and in Bihar it's with JDU, and lines of worries are on the faces of both the PM and Chanakya. Even though these guys have made the government, well, they really haven't. They're supporting Shinde as who's the chief minister, which is the breakaway Shiv Sena. And on the other side, also they're not in government really, because they're supporting JDU, Nitish Kumar as the chief minister. But also remember that neither of these two big states have they ever been able to control and win on their own, and they possibly can't. The reason for that is Maharashtra, because of the huge divisiveness between the Peshwas, which are basically the Brahmins, and the Marathas, and that's exactly going to play out again, because even though these guys think they've got the cat's whiskers and they're licking the cream, all the people who joined part of the government, but the point is all these elected officials, maybe they control the government at this point of time, but are the people with them? And those are the people are what is going to be important, who are all currently, it seems, with Uddhav Thackeray. If Uddhav Thackeray then eventually, as they say, ties up with the MV, because stays as the NVA, there's a possibility that the 24 elections are going to be tough for the BJP once again. As is Bihar. Bihar also sitting in tenterhooks, because constantly this the angst between the two is visible in almost every decision that's coming of late, whether it's the opposition to the Agniveers by Nitish Kumar, and whether it is the census or caste census going down to the bottom. All these things are huge things that are going to play out, right? And they desperately need Nitish Kumar. But the problem with Bihar is that this umbrella that they've created of Hindutva and trying to fit all the castes, it's just not working in Bihar. It's just because there's too many divisions within all communities, right? So here, BJP JDU rift comes to the fore again, now over official transfers on almost everything, right? There's a Shinde government wins trust vote, says disqualify 15 Sena MLAs, 11 from Congress turn up late, Uddhav camp moves SC against rebels, backed Shinde at cost of losing CM job to end MBS graft, says BJP. Like, give me a break, guys. MBS graft. What was the graft that happened to the BJP in Maharashtra, right? Just because you didn't hear about it means it didn't happen. Uddhav's fresh salvo at Shinde, auto driver whose brakes failed. Like I said, MVA should fight 2024 Mahapolls together, and also they should find the BMC together, right? BJP workers not sore over CM post, says Fadnavis. And what you see what's happening, man. The Sena guys should also be really worried the way Shinde is constantly being humiliated. He just constantly is looking over his shoulder all the time to see what Fadnavis wants him to say, right? Amazing, right? And give me a new one. The BJP workers are upset, right? Goa Congress set to sack 2 MLAs for trying to split party. So now, but after that, the play seems to have become Goa. They already have a government, but they want to send the Congress into the darkness, which is not going to happen. And the Congress has got to be ready for this, right? Crisis hits Goa Congress. 6 of its 11 MLAs willing to join BJP for the time being stopped, right? And this is the other place they're going, right? After MVA's collapse, suspense over future of JMM Congress government. Right? This is what you mean party with a difference. Only in the election mode, only elections. After Azamgarh win, UP BJP begins wooing SP's Yadav supporters. This is the other thing that they're worried about is Akhilesh. And this currently seem to be doing a good job getting Raj Bahar out. But Akhilesh must stick with the jobs. It is critical. And maybe if these 3 youngsters join up together, which is also Congress as it might happen, it might be a game changer this time, right? Is BJP Malik Arunachal ex-MP calls out Congress's lack of fight in the Northeast. I realize I went there, right? The problem is because they're totally tied to the apron strings of the central government for funding. They've not been allowed to develop anything themselves, right? So it goes with, whichever way the central political wind blows, the Northeast flows. But there is absolutely the people of that region are not really in with the experiment of the BJP trying to create a unitary environment. And that's the place where the conflict is going to happen and is happening in terms of culture. Congress ruled Rajasthan gets biggest investment pledges from Adani and Bani, rupees 1.6 lakh crore. Now either this is showing the winds turning, or it shows, either way, it's like, these guys, how they're doing it in Rajasthan, which is the other spot that BJP wants to destabilize. What's going to happen in Rajasthan? Just watch this space on that one, folks. Cheers. Congress and Sachin Pilot and Galore should forget about their internal problems and keep it together, folks. Cheers. Cheers. So the Congress is finally nailing them as far as Agniveer and LAC and China is concerned. And somebody needs to, right? You can't let them get away scot-free, right? LAC standoff, Agnipath and opposition agenda for Parliament's monsoon session. The other thing I'm seeing is that there are daily pressures being done by Congress and they're attacking them, right? Can't be a police state. SC calls for new bail law. And I don't think and that's critical. And here's the other thing that I find we are running down a really slippery slope. Birth rate controls must not impact religious balances. Yogi, is that what it's all about? How are you going to control that caste or religion, right? Uttar Pradesh CM said efforts towards population stabilization should be such that they rise above caste and religious dynamics, as a difference in population growth between communities adversely impacts religious demography and could lead to chaos and anarchy. Is he for real? Giriraj pitches for stringent population law. Trade deficit jumps to record 25.63 billion. So while we're jumping around with all this stuff, we find that we are down a slippery slope as far as that is concerned. Amid Rao, Modi says Kali's blessing always with India. What do you think, guys? Is Kali's blessing with us or not? Kali remarks FIR filed against Mahua on MP CM's direction. And what did she say? She said, Kali posted to me, Kali is a meat-eating, alcohol-accepting goddess, right? And that's true. How can you run away from that, right? Mamta's politics to blame for Moitera's remarks is BJP. So obviously BJP is responsible for Nupur's remarks, right? On the flip side of the same coin. Amarnath told Rao 16 rescuers raced to save those trapped. So all these religious, and not just Hinduism, right? Any other big religious processions always causes so much death. So is God telling us something? PM in Varanasi era of forcing anything on youth has ended. Was anything being forced on the youth? In fact, the only tradition where youth were forced to follow is in the old periods, right? And this is where he's taking us. Teachers should create human resources, not just degree holders. Modi in Varanasi, absolutely true. But from a man who's fudged his degree, I don't know. Must bring in system of education rooted in Indian values, says Pradhan. I don't even know whether Pradhan from Odisha knows any Indian values. British education system meant to create servant classes. So also every system, right? Our caste system is supposed to have created, basically the reason why servants have been created. Modi, British education not part of Indian ethos, folks. Modi ji, Indian ethos, caste system. BHP slams SC for ignoring radical Islam's terror rate. Natural farming is service to Mother Earth. Gau Mata says, now please don't go down this slippery slope of natural farming. See what happened to Sri Lanka. Prime Minister, let's wake up, right? Smell the coffee. CBI arrests Tata Projects power grid executives. And are they going after Tatas? At 7.5 lakh, Agnipeet gets IAF its most applications ever. I think it's a whole bunch of BS. UP Deputy CM Additional Chief Secretary spar over doctors' transfers. So things in UP still not clear. Akhilesh hits back at Rajbahar SP doesn't need anyone's advice. Truly, don't nudge us to seek independent Tamil Nadu, says DMK. Raja, okay, that's what I said. Chhattisgarh and UP police spar over Z anchors in arrest. That is the worst part, right? The military's political ethos is key preserve it, says Uday Bhaskar. The need for an objective review and transformation of Indian military is imperative, of course. But the drivers must be those of abiding national security interests at all time, which seems to be lost in this Agnipath reason. BJP wins SP Bastion, AAP loses Punjab seat. Herbert Dabbard continues, folks. Jai Hind. It may look like that the BJP is changed the name of the game or changed the game in itself because, at this end of the day, there's no ideology left, right? But they're going to get caught in that contradiction. And what you see here, I proposed Shinde's name for CM, party agreed. Fadnavis, and this is after seeing for 2 days sulking with a long face, right? Then he's forced to say that. And now it's really funny how he's kind of cut putliing the Shinde, right? WHO's Tulsi Bhai PM gives Tedros a new name. This is on the same time that Tedros is telling us that the figures that we've given for COVID are fudged. Eye on Gujarat polls, BJP said to intensify Dalit reach. And where the Dalits and the scheduled tribes have been hammered the most, folks, is in Gujarat in the name of development. And there really is no development, right? UP seeks consultant to help it become 1 trillion economy. So there's a Jumla in UP Raj, in his Raj. Every guy there seems to be corrupt. So they're creating all these Jumlas. So this is for this 1 trillion. They're going to appoint a consultant. That consultant is going to make billions of dollars, obviously to make it a trillion economy, he's going to charge $1 billion and then spread the cheer. Yogi visits village in Uttarakhand after 5 years. So that's really funny. He's seen taking a blessing from his mother. Everybody thinks of their mother. Why? Aka Modi, right? With rising tensions, BJP faces a political dilemma, says Rahul Verma. And that's the important part you should note. There is a view that the current state of sectarian tensions was inevitable in a way because majoritarian rhetoric has become part of the ruling party's electoral agenda. But signals coming from top leadership of the BJP and its ideological font, the RSS, indicate that the ruling party is increasingly finding itself in a tricky position due to the cascading effect of these events. The tipping point seems to have been reached. It has not only exposed the inner fault lines of hardliners versus moderates within the Hindutva ecosystem, but also exposed the fundamental contradiction between the party's ideological political goals with its governance related imperatives. And this is the important part to note. And also, as you read with R. Jagannathan, he says Modi and BJP at crossroads, post Nupur tensions between party-based wish list and GOI's policy agenda are sharper. The onus is on Modi to bridge the gulf between the party's base and his attempt to retain a wider connect with voters outside the base. He must speak to his party in a way in which it knows its own concerns are addressed, even while it agrees to support the need for social peace so that India can become a 8 to 10 trillion economy in the next 10 years. And 3, BJP cannot abandon either Hindutva or its broader agenda of keeping social tensions at bay so that the economy can move ahead. That's the important part. And guess what? Story of Narendra and Abbas. Why does it suddenly show up? PM's Modi's reference in his blog to a Muslim in distress was not incidental. He says, why did Prime Minister Modi out of the blue mention Abbas Ramsada, who lived for a while in the Modi household as a child because his father Mian Bhai passed away prematurely and the family was finding it tough to ensure the Abbas could continue school education. But remember this, each of these details seek to establish that Modi's upbringing was not in an Islamophobic family. Instead, taking care of a Muslim in distress was part of his familial values. It is a different matter that the episode with Abbas took place in 73, by which time Modi had left home and become part of the RSS. Modi would probably have had no or very little interaction with Abbas because he was a classmate of his younger brother Pankaj. This is not mentioned, and it is suggested that that Hiraben showering love and care like she said did for all of her siblings was endorsed by Modi. That's what Modi is all about, right? Where BJP went wrong in the Nupur Naveen case, writes Rahul Shiv Shankar, who seems to be another bhakt lost in the melee. Second, the GOI description of the two mainstream figures as fringe, I agree, but they're really real mainstream. BJP, which has convinced many voters that it is a champion of the national interest and which always counters increasing international scrutiny of India's purported descent into intolerance, should have known better than to sacrifice national pride at the altar of expediency. Rahul Shiv Shankar, man, get your hair shaved, man. You're fucking such a dim. Anyway, what I'm saying is this, right? Everybody knows where their bread is buttered. You can take on the United States and act bluster because that's a democracy, right? It's not going to come back and you are. You really can't take on the Middle East because they got you by the junkers. Well, tell somebody, should tell this Rahul Shiv Shankar, right? $83 billion is what we get in as remittances. 65% of that comes from Khadi Deshas. And out of that, bulk of it is poor Muslim working folks in those regions, man. They yank our chain. You yank Rahul Shiv Shankar, you'll be back in the bloody dark ages. Fifth and unsurprising, BJP's core bank was left fuming. Obviously, there are too many contradictions. Sixth, others on the right pointed out that BJP must give up trying to redeem itself in the eyes of certain liberals, which it wasn't. Seventh, and in conclusion, BJP's strategy of targeting hate speech in its rank must be guided by pragmatism. Well, firstly, the pragmatism, it should not be there at all. It should not support it, man. That's what the way it should be. Cheers.